Hey everyone. Alright, so let's talk about Walk Among the Tombstones, the new Liam Neeson thriller. Now, this was a movie that as soon as I heard about it and as soon as I saw the trailer for it, I was sold on this movie. That's how it first started. I was looking at Liam Neeson's Internet Movie Database page, and I saw this movie, A Walk Among the Tombstones, and read the synopsis of it. Saw it was going to be rated R. I thought, oh, rated R Liam Neeson movie. All right, this is going to be awesome. And then as soon as I got the trailer for it, thought even more awesomeness. So I was really psyched for this movie coming out. And long story short, I wasn't disappointed at all. I thought this was a great movie. This was a really, really great movie. But with me saying that I wasn't disappointed, that's true. But I did not know what to expect going into this movie. Because with it being a lot of other Brad Jones and Brian Lewis in their review from the other day when they went to the midnight screening, they touched on this point that when you see the trailer for this movie, when you see it advertised, going into this movie, it'd be quite easy to make the mistake of thinking that you're going to get something very much along the lines of Taken. But, and I suppose it's understandable because you got that scene in the trailers, where Liam Neeson is on the phone to these kidnappers, much like in Taken. So, and obviously it's Liam Neeson, so it's easy to make that mistake. But that is not this movie. It'd be a big mistake to go into this movie expecting to see something along the lines of Taken, and going into this expecting to see essentially Taken 3, that would be a big mistake because it is not this movie. As great as this movie is, it's very different from Taken. Even the character Liam Neeson plays in this movie, he's not at all like Brian Mills, he's still a character you can that you can like and that you can get behind. You can root for him, but not Brian Mills at all. So let's just get right into this. Basically, a basic breakdown of this movie is we start New York City, 1991. Liam Neeson obviously is a cop at this point, and you see this in the trailer. He goes into this bar, he's having a drink, the place gets held up by this group of guys. The bartender gets shot. These three guys bail. Liam Neeson chases after him. They get into a gunfight. He kills all three. He gets all three. Well, he kills two of them. Gets the third guy in the leg. But then he realises during this gunfight, one of his bullets strayed off and hit a 7-year-old girl right in the eye and killed her. And following that, he gave up drinking because he even admitted, during that shootout, he was far from sober. So he gave up drinking and he retired from the force at that point. So he's a retired cop, as you guys, and also you guys who have read the books will know this already. So yes, he's a retired police officer and a recovering alcoholic. So we cut now to 1999, where the main body of the movie takes place. And I didn't know it was set in 1999. Obviously, I haven't read the book. But no, I mean, you couldn't tell from the trailer, of course, but no, I didn't know this movie was set in 1999. I was quite happy with that. I got a little chuckle out of that. That was great, and you get quite a few references to the Y2K problem throughout the movie, which is pretty fun. So yeah, The main body of the film is set in 1999, still in New York City. So Liam Neeson is now working, of course, as a private investigator. And he's approached by this businessman, played by Dan Stevens from The Guest. Dan Stevens, very good in The Guest, very good in this movie too. So yeah, he's a businessman, or at least on the surface he is. He initially tells Liam Neeson, "Oh, I'm in construction," but then obviously Liam Neeson, nah, he's not having it. He digs a little deeper and eventually gets to the bottom of it and finds out that this guy, Dan Stevens, he's into drugs. Liam Neeson says, "You're a drug dealer, aren't you?" And then Dan Stevens says, "Well, I'm actually a drug trafficker." So yeah, a guy who's heavily involved in drugs, that's where the money comes from. And you can see as soon as we're introduced to this guy, he's a very wealthy guy, the place in which he lives, and so him and Liam Neeson sit down and talk, and he says, "Look, I want you to find these guys. They kidnapped my wife, they demanded a ransom, which I paid, but they killed her anyway. So I want you to find these guys and bring them to me." And initially, Liam Neeson refuses. Yeah, he says, "You got to take this to the cops." And then Dan Stevens says, "Well, they said no, please." And me being me being in the profession that I am, if you can call drug dealing or drug trafficking a profession, it's far from ideal going to the cops, So obviously Liam Neeson comes more and more to understand the situation. But these guys who kidnapped and killed Dan Stevens' wife, these guys, these guys are pretty terrifying. And killing her is just one of the many number of things they did to her. Raped her, and raped her, killed her, chopped her up into little pieces. This movie is very dark and it's very disturbing. I wasn't prepared for this, but it is very good. It is very good. That's something I'd say you need to prepare yourself for, how dark and disturbing this movie gets. So yes, Liam Neeson eventually is persuaded to take this job, and Dan Stevens says, "Look, you get 20 grand now and an extra 20 grand when you bring these guys to me." So we get that, and then, as you might expect, the main body of the movie is Liam Neeson conducting his investigations. You're going from place to place, talking to different people and trying to track these guys down. And we see these guys throughout the movie, and we find out that Dan Stevens' wife, who they kidnapped and killed, she was just one of a number of women who they've done that to. We find out that the year previous, in 1998, they did almost the exact same thing. Kidnapped a woman, contacted her fiance, demanded a ransom, which he paid, and then killed her anyway, and cut her into pieces. And so this isn't the first time these guys have done something like this, and we find out that they're getting ready to strike again, but we'll get to that. So yeah, Liam Neeson is conducting his investigations and he's getting closer and closer to these guys, and during the course of his investigations he befriends this young kid, a teenager called TJ, and TJ becomes his sort of associate, his sidekick, because when these guys get talking, the kid expresses an interest in, well, it's something I'd very much like to do, a private investigating seems like a real cool job. So yeah, he just tags along with Liam Neeson for the rest of the movie and helps him out. And he actually comes very much into play later on. He plays a major part in the back end of the movie. But again, he's one of the main characters in this. So yeah, Liam Neeson is getting closer and closer and finding out more and more about these guys. And finding out, these guys are bad news. You don't want to mess with these guys. These guys are really out there. And as things go on, Dan Stevens gets into contact with Liam Neeson again and says, we got another problem. My friend, who's also involved in drug dealing, drug trafficking, these guys have targeted him and they've kidnapped his 14-year-old daughter. So this is well into the movie now. This is getting into the back end of the movie, because obviously this investigation that Liam Neeson's been on has been going on for a while. He's and he's the amount of progress he's made. So yeah, now this is sort of where we're building to the climax of the movie now. That Dan Stevens' friend, his 14-year-old daughter, has now been kidnapped by these guys, and he needs Liam Neeson's help too. Now this, for me, was the high point of the movie. I mean, as good as the introduction was, with Dan Stevens coming and saying, look, I need you to find these guys that kidnapped my wife, I paid the ransom and they killed her anyway. That was great. And this investigation has been pretty interesting. Like, a lot of thought and effort has gone into this movie. And like I say, even though I've not read the books, the source material must have been pretty solid, because it's such a well made and well done film. You can tell a lot of time, effort and thought has been put into this. It's not something that's been thrown together, just to make money. It's not a popcorn flick. No, it's kind of like a passion project, You can tell that everyone working on this, wanted to make the best product they could. They're all bringing their A game. The director, the writers, and all the actors. Yeah, and it genuinely shows. So yes. Dan Stevens then brings Liam Neeson over to his friend's house and they get talking, and Dan Stevens' friend explains to Neeson what's happened, and then of course he gets a call from the guys who've kidnapped his daughter, and they give their demands, and that's when Liam Neeson takes over. He gets on the phone with them and sorts things out. Now, one thing he does this time, which in response to what they did with Dan Stevens' wife, is he emphasises the need or the importance of establishing that this guy's daughter is indeed still alive and that they haven't already killed her anyway, or that they're not going to go ahead and kill her anyway. And he manages to do this. Of course, they do the same thing that they did with Dan Stevens. Like, they won't let the guy speak to his daughter in the way that they wouldn't let Dan Stevens speak to his wife when they'd kidnapped her. So basically, they establish that the daughter's alive and well by, asking questions that only she would know the answer to. So they establish that the daughter's still alive, and they establish what the ransom's going to be, and they establish where they're going to meet, how the deal's going to go down, and they decide that the deal's going to go down at this particular cemetery. So they all go and meet there. But one of the things when they were getting the money together is the father didn't have enough to meet the demands. But because I think that's what it was, they were demanding a full $1 million for his daughter's return, and the dad was saying, "I'm sorry, I do not have that money to hand right now. You know, it'd take me a while to get that sort of money together, but obviously, you know, they're demanding it tonight. You know, we have no time." So what they do is they say, "We've got $500 to hand now, and we can get counterfeit money of pretty high quality, so we're going to have to mix the counterfeit in with this real $500 and create the illusion that there is actually $1 million in these bags, you know, because basically, you know, they want the cash in two bags." So that's what they do, and of course they're preparing themselves, you know, for the worst, because they know these guys during the deal, they could notice, and if they notice, obviously a lot of, you know, things are going to kick off. So, but anyway, you know, they're gonna do what they can. So we get cuts to the night. They all arrive at the cemetery for the exchange. Liam Neeson goes to meet these two guys, and he has the 2 bags of money, and he's being covered by Dan Stevens, his brother, and also his friend and his bodyguard. They're all there covering Liam Neeson, and they perform the exchange. Liam Neeson gets the daughter and hands these 2 bags of money over to the 2 guys the 2 kidnappers, and it's all going really well at this point. But there's a really, really disturbing scene here, because during the exchange, as the daughter's walking towards Liam Neeson, you see a load of blood dripping from her hand, and Liam Neeson even says, you know, "What the hell's wrong with her hand?" Now, I feared the worst at this point, because the way this movie had been going, I would not have been surprised if they cut this girl's wrists. I would not have been surprised at all if they sliced this girl's wrists open. But no, they didn't. They took 2 of her fingers off. But they say, "Oh, sorry, we did that before you made your demands. Yeah, we did that before we agreed on the terms. Sorry about that." And that right there shows you how horrific these 2 guys really are, how sadistic these 2 guys really are. And I remember watching Brad Jones and Brian Lewis' review. They hit the nail on the head. I mean, you could conceive that 14-year-old girl wasn't going to make it out alive. She does. Thankfully, she does. But you could conceive of, you know, like I say, she could, when she walked over towards Liam Neeson, her wrists could have been completely slashed, and you would not have been surprised at all. The way this movie was going, you know, how dark and disturbing this movie got, it would not have been out of place. So yeah, they make the exchange, and Liam Neeson sends the girl back to her dad. Her and the dad get out of there, and as they're getting ready to go, the 2 guys realise the money's counterfeit. So then a big massive firefight in the cemetery commences. You know, gunfire left, right and centre. Dan Stevens' brother gets killed, and Liam Neeson manages to get one of the guys in in his side, like because he's got body armor on the front and back, but I think his sides were uncovered, so he manages to get him in the side of the ribs, I think, as the guy is getting in the van to escape. So this guy's injured, and but these two guys manage to escape in the van. And Liam Neeson and Dan Stevens head back to their car, but obviously the hell of it is they don't know where these guys have gone. Now this is where TJ, the kid who I mentioned, comes into play. This is where he really comes into play, because he'd gone with them to this exchange, because initially when Liam Neeson got invited to Dan Stevens' friend's house, TJ wasn't with him, but Liam Neeson called him up while he was at the friend's house, because he needed TJ to go to his apartment and get him this box and bring it to him, and this box had all of like Liam Neeson's, it had his old gun from when he was a cop and his ammunition in there, so he was going to take that with him. And he had, and also his old set of handcuffs. Yeah, so TJ went with them to this exchange, and he'd stayed in the car. But when Liam Neeson and Dan Stevens get back to the car, TJ disappeared. So obviously they're wondering where the hell he's gone, and we find out that he'd actually snuck into the back of the kidnappers' van. So he's gone back to their hideout with them. Obviously, albeit unknown to these two guys. Now, obviously, we arrive back at the kidnappers' hideout. They get out of the van and head into the house. And so TJ's left alone in the back of this van. And Liam Neeson and Dan Stevens call him on his mobile and say, "Where the hell are you?" And TJ says, I'm back at the kidnappers' hideout. And he gets out of the van and obviously has a look around and tells Liam Neeson and Dan Stevens where this hideout is, gives them the address, and Liam Neeson and Dan Stevens basically say, "Sit tight, we'll be there in 5. It's less than a mile away, we'll be there soon." And now, while all this is going on, we go into the kidnapper's house, and you've got these two guys saying, "Look, even though most of this money's counterfeit, we've still got a couple of $100 of real money." And obviously the guy who's been shot, he's getting more and more worried about this bullet wound, saying, "I've never been shot before, you're going to have to do something." And they go down to the basement where they've got all the tools in there. And while they're down there, the other guy just kills the one who's been wounded. He has this like metal wire and he wraps it around his throat and flat out kills him. He's going to take this $500 for himself. And that again goes to show what these guys are really all about. There's no honour, there's no loyalty between these two. These guys will turn on each other in a heartbeat. So yeah, this guy kills the other one who's been wounded and leaves the body down in the basement. He's left in a bloody heap, slumped up against the wall. And the kidnapper who's still alive goes back upstairs and fetches himself something to eat, completely nonchalantly, casual as you like, just says, "Nah, this can wait, I'll dispose of that body later, I'm going to go get me some food." Now, the great thing about this scene is when TJ, or when we found out that TJ had snuck in the back of the kidnapper's van and was going back to their hideout with him, I was ready to throw something at the screen. I was getting furious because I thought I knew where this was going, saying, "Oh God, don't let them find him. Don't let them take him hostage, because the amount of times in movies we've seen this, where there might be the young kid, aspiring to be, wanting to be this great help to our heroes, and goes and gets himself in danger, and ends up needing rescuing himself. This movie doesn't do that. Oh man, I fell in love with this movie at that point. It didn't do it. It didn't do it. He's sneaking round the outside of the house, looking through the windows, trying to see what's going on. And one of the guys, the kidnapper who was injured by the gunshot wound, actually spots him. But before he can say anything, the other guy kills him. So that was a close call, but they didn't do it. Thank you, movie. Because honestly, I would have threw something at the screen if they did that. I really could have done, because it's so annoying. The amount of times we've seen it, it's so irritating. But they didn't do it. No. As soon as that happens, TJ just goes back to where. Comes back to the front of the house and waits by the road for Liam Neeson and Dan Stevens to get there. Smart kid. Yeah. So yeah, Liam Neeson and Dan Stevens arrive and make their way into the house and confront the remaining kidnapper. And yeah. From there, because they have him at gunpoint, of course, and then Liam Neeson takes his cuffs and handcuffs the guy to the radiator, and he says to Dan Stevens, "Look, we have him now. Now, you need to make a decision. This guy has done enough, and there's enough evidence to warrant, 3 life sentences at least. So why don't you just turn him in the authorities? Or I could just walk away right now and just leave him in your hands to do with him what you will." And Dan Stevens, he's saying, "Do you think after what he's done, I'd be satisfied with turning him over to the authorities? Because I wouldn't be." And credit to Liam Neeson's character, he just comes out and says, "I understand that, and that's why it has to be your decision." Because Liam Neeson's character, obviously, he's a flawed character. He's he's a cop who was involved in the shooting of an innocent bystander. He's a recovering alcoholic. He's not perfect, and he knows this, and obviously he's quite a streetwise guy, so he knows that he has no illusions here. He knows Dan Stevens is not going to turn this guy over to the authorities. So Liam Neeson does just that. He just walks away and leaves Dan Stevens alone in the house with this kidnapper who is handcuffed to the radiator. Now, this is where things get interesting, because Dan Stevens grabs this bottle and cold cocks the kidnapper with it, knocks him out, and then he heads down into the basement to find some tools to go to work on this guy with. Now, that's all well and good, but while he's down there, the kidnapper upstairs comes back around. Oh yeah, he regains consciousness, and thinking this is not good. And you can see he's struggling. He's trying to get himself he's trying to release himself from these handcuffs, and he gets his foot and he's trying to open this drawer nearby, and then it cuts outside to Liam Neeson and TJ, and he says to TJ, look, go back to my apartment, get some rest and wait for me there, and puts TJ in the taxi and sends him on his way. And Liam Neeson goes back to the house, and he goes inside, and things are strangely quiet in there, and there's no one to be seen. The guy is no longer handcuffed to the radiator, and everything is so eerily quiet. So Liam Neeson's looking he looks around the kitchen, and then he goes and heads down into the basement, and there on the basement stairs he sees this body and there's blood everywhere. And when he gets a closer look, the body turns out to be Dan Stevens. So poor Dan Stevens died off camera. But that's okay though. I didn't get mad at this movie for that. I didn't get mad at The Ghost in the Darkness when they killed Michael Douglas off camera. So I'm not going to get mad at this movie for killing Dan Stevens off camera. So yeah, Liam Neeson is instantly on guard, gets his gun back out and saying, right, this other guy is in here somewhere. So he goes down into the cellar and he's looking around. Obviously it's not the best lit part of the house, so obviously it'd be very easy, there's plenty of shadow to take cover in. Anyway, Liam Neeson's looking around, and you see, we get that shot from the trailer, where the kidnapper comes out of nowhere again with this metal wire and jumps Liam Neeson from behind. So they have this fight ensues. And this kidnapper's got this guy's got the upper hand on Liam Neeson, but in fairness, he had the element of surprise, so they both fight. This guy gets the upper hand, and then he gets Liam Neeson on the ground and goes to make a grab for this meat cleaver that he's got in this sink nearby. So he goes to make a grab for that, and while Liam Neeson's on the ground, he looks over to where the dead kidnapper's body is, and sees in his pocket that he has this taser, this electric taser. So Liam Neeson just scrambles over to the body, grabs this taser out of his pocket, and as the other guy comes at him with this big meat cleaver, Liam Neeson hurls himself out the way. This guy brings this meat cleaver down into the chest of the dead guy on the ground, and Liam Neeson tasers the guy. And tases him in the stomach, and I think he tases him in the neck, and obviously that floors the guy instantly, and the guy drops the meat cleaver, and Liam Neeson kicks it away. He gets back to his feet and then kicks it away, and then goes over and picks his gun up, and the kidnapper who's been tasered, he's trying to get back to his feet, and he goes to say something to Liam Neeson. He's going to deliver, as you can imagine, one of those trademark villainous monologues. Liam Neeson, he doesn't want to hear it. He's like, I don't think so. And no sooner does this guy open his mouth to speak to Liam Neeson just shoots him point blank in the face and kills him there and then, as you might expect. He kills the guy, and that's the thing. Sorry to go off point, but when people get shot in this movie, they get shot. Blood explodes out of people in this movie, much like in The Guest. When people get shot in that movie, they get shot. It's the same thing here. Yeah, but obviously both those movies are R-rated. It's easy to see why those movies are R-rated. Like, when I was talking at the beginning, this movie, Walk Among the Tombstones, when Liam Neeson's chasing those three guys out the bar, I think one of them gets in a car, and goes to drive off. Liam Neeson shoots this guy in the head and blood splatters all over the windscreen. Like I say, people get shot in this movie, and when you see that poor 7-year-old girl who got caught in the crossfire, who got caught by a stray bullet in her eye, she got shot, man. Not to be awful, because it's a pretty horrific scene, disturbing. It's really dark and it's horrible. But yeah, her eye completely gone. Yeah. Yeah. Like I say, both these movies, it's easy to see why this movie got an R rating. And then when you see the handiwork of these two guys who kidnap and chop up women, like when Dan Stevens finds the remains of his dead wife chopped up and placed into these plastic cocaine bags in the boot of an abandoned car, and sticks his knife in to see what the hell, because like I say, the way they've been packaged, they look like small packets of cocaine, right? And he picks a packet up and pulls a switchblade and sticks inside to see what is in these packets, and just blood comes pouring out the damn thing. That is one of the most disturbing things. That got a huge, like, when I saw that, and he sticks the knife and then blood just comes gushing out this packet. Obviously, Dan Stevens almost faints, and you feel it for him. This isn't good. This is not good. Yeah. This is a great R-rated movie, much like The Guest. But yeah, that's a really tough scene to watch. That when Jesus, like I say, these two guys, you feel no remorse from when they get the just desserts at the end, and that when Liam Neeson is conducting his investigations, he finds that these two guys were at one point involved with the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, because they've managed to get hold of these files which pertain or relate to these big drug dealers. They've got these big the files of these drug dealers, so they know everything about them, and that's how they've managed to target them and target their significant other, be it their wife, or in the case of Dan Stevens' friend, his daughter. So it's a pretty scary thought, but again, that's something that is a very true point. The best way to get back at someone is not necessarily by targeting them, but by targeting a loved one, or not necessarily getting back at them, but sending them a message of some sort. Yeah. But as Liam Neeson points out, these guys wouldn't have been with the DEA for a very long period of time, because obviously they're clearly mentally unstable, they're crazy, but they were there long enough to get these files, so the damage had been done. So yeah, that was one of the main aspects of his investigation, finding that out, because that explains why how they managed to target these guys who were heavily involved with drug dealing, drug trafficking. That explains the connection. So yeah, both the kidnappers have been killed, and that is, the job's done. And then the movie ends with Liam Neeson going back to his apartment, and obviously TJ's there, and the final scene is Liam Neeson sitting down at his kitchen table with one of TJ's drawings that he'd done, because one of the things about TJ is he's a very talented artist, and yeah, like I say, Liam Neeson instantly realised it, and he's, a lot of the time when they're together, he's looking at all these different sketches that TJ has been doing, and obviously one that he'd done for Liam Neeson, left it on his kitchen table for him. And that's our final shot. Liam Neeson sits down at the table, he's looking at this sketch, and then obviously it zooms out and then cuts to an exterior shot of his apartment, and then obviously zooms further and further out to give you a whole wide angle shot of New York City, and that then obviously cuts to credits, and that's our movie. And like I say, you couldn't ask for any more, like I say, job's done, let's go home. Because one thing that Brad Jones and Brian Lewis pointed out, and quite rightly so, is Liam Neeson, he had no personal stake or investment in this, in what was going on. Obviously, he was just someone who'd been paid to be involved and help out. He was just doing a job. Like in Taken, obviously he's very much personally invested in that, because obviously his daughter's been kidnapped. Not the case here. So obviously it's good that the movie ends that way, because it's how it should end. He's done the job he's been asked to do. He just goes home and gets on with the rest of his life now. So that's all we needed to see. So yeah, that is A Walk Among the Tombstones, and just a brief overview. And like I say, I was really enjoyed this movie. Really did. Yeah, it's been an interesting year for Liam Neeson, because he got off to a great start with Non-Stop, and really had a lot of fun with the Lego movie. Another great choice, of his to be in that. Yeah, he was really good in that. Another really good movie. Then obviously we had the low point of the year with A Million Ways to Die in the West. Jesus Christ, I hate that movie. What a waste of time, effort and money. Honestly, and he was wasted in that movie. He was in that movie for all of 10 minutes. Honestly, like the great effort, the great effort in Non-Stop, the great effort in the Lego movie. Two really good movies, but then obviously you get this. Puts those two movies. It really puts a dampener on, puts a stain, soils those two movies completely. But you think, Liam Neeson, you did such a great job in these two movies, then to go do something like this, the Lego movie was so much fun, and Non-Stop was such a really well done thriller, but then to go do something like this, to go do A Million Ways to Die in the West, Jesus Christ. But in fairness, found a great way to make up for it, So if you were to put it on a if you were to put it on a graph, if you were to pinpoint it on a graph, you have the high points, Non-Stop and the Lego movie. You have the damn low point of A Million Ways to Die in the West, and obviously another high point again. We're back on track with Walk Among the Tombstones. Yeah, so a really good way to make up for the disaster that was A Million Ways to Die in the West. But yeah, I highly recommend this movie. This was great. If you it's easy to see why this got an R rating. Definite hard R movie. Yeah. It looks like the R-rated, yeah, nice to be getting an influx of R-rated movies at the minute. Obviously, we've got The Guest, we've got we've got this one, Walk on the Tombstones. Next week we're getting The Equalizer, again rated R. Or the UK release date for the November man's finally been announced, November 7th. Again, another R-rated movie. I'll be there for that one. I'll go on the first day. Like I say, I'm so psyched to see Pierce Brosnan back in an action movie. But yes, honestly, it's nice that we've gone back. It's nice that Liam Neeson's made up for A Million Ways to Die in the West. But genuinely, that's the best way to look at it. You know, if you look at it, if you've got like a line graph, you know, you've got the high points here, non-stop Lego movie, low point, Million Ways to Die in the West, and then another high point in A Walk Among the Tombstones. Yeah, but highly recommend this movie. But that's my advice. Please don't go into this movie expecting to see something like Taken, because you might be you'll probably be a bit disappointed. But you know, if you just go into it don't go in with any expectations. Just, you know that you're going to go in to see a good solid thriller. You know, that's enough, and you won't be disappointed. So that pretty much brings this movie movie review to a close. And like I say, all round great effort. Everything about this movie is just really good. You know, like we talk about the music score, how great the music score for The Guest was. It really was. Here, it was interesting because there was not that much of a music score in this movie. There was some, but a lot of this movie was just silent, and it really worked. It really did. It's kind of like, the best way to summarise the music score in this was that there was just enough and no more. You know, like you had a main title track, you had an end credits track, and you had some music that played during the course of the movie. But for the most part, during the movie, it was just silence, you know, just the natural sounds of the scene, and that really worked. But yeah, honestly, everyone brings the real game in this movie, cast and crew alike, and it really shows. You can really tell that this was a passion project. And like I say, I haven't read the book, but I still really enjoyed the movie. So it's not one of those, you don't have to have read the book to see the movie or see and enjoy the movie. You don't have to have read the book. And I think, again, I've said it before, but I think that shows how good of an the good thing about an adaptation is you don't necessarily have had to read the source material beforehand to get some enjoyment out of the movie. So yeah, that brings this to a close. Like I say, long story short, really great movie, and I highly recommend it. Go see it. If you're thinking about going to see it, go see it. You'll enjoy it. And like I say, Liam Neeson is on top form as always. So yes, that's that. And I hope, of course, as always, I hope if you've seen the movie already, you agree with some of the points that I've made. If you haven't seen the movie, I hope that this has sparked your interest to go and see it. And if you do decide to go and see it, I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you for sticking with me for this review, or throughout this review. Thank you, and thank you for watching and listening. And I'll see you all next time. Thank you, everyone.